Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime for Liverpool's next Premier League game, our sixth league game of this 2019-20 campaign. This time we're taking on Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. It's on Sunday, it's at 4:30, it's live on the telly in the UK and probably wherever you are. It is the centrepiece of the weekend and it's probably, I'd say definitely our toughest league game so far. I think the away match at St Mary's comes close for also the extraneous circumstances around the Super Cup and coming back late and the possibility of Adrian not playing and it being, right at the start of his Liverpool career as well, where he hadn't really had any time to train with the players whatsoever. But I think in terms of the calibre of the opponent, the fact it was away from home as well, I think while Arsenal are a good team when we played them, it was at home where you feel like we've got that security blanket where we do pretty much always show up and teams do always seem to have a difficult time when they come to Anfield. But Stamford Bridge, it's always a tough ground to go. No matter what kind of form Chelsea are in, it's always difficult to get a result there. And it always feels like an achievement, even, in the dark days of the end of Mourinho's second tenure as their manager, when we went there under Jurgen Klopp and won 3-1. And if I'm remembering rightly, that was his first win as Liverpool manager. That still felt like a massive achievement, even though Chelsea were playing absolutely terribly at the moment, simply because it's a tough ground to go to. There's always a pretty decent atmosphere. Obviously, it's got nothing on Anfield or anything like that, but they do kind of get on top of the players. It's a proper old-fashioned football ground, and Chelsea are always fired up to make sure that they don't lose a game at home, especially to a team that they are going to perceive as a rival. And while I think Liverpool are obviously significantly ahead of them now in the league, and they're certainly not on quite the same level, we're still all Big Six teams, and you never want to lose a game against another Big Six team at home. I think for them, a draw would definitely be a really solid result. I know that obviously they drew with us in the Super Cup and they'd maybe be looking to go one better in this match, and they also are doing sort of middling in the league in terms of, they're very much up and down, so I think a point would represent a solid result. Whereas for Liverpool, it's got to be all about getting that win. It would be such a huge marker if we came away with 3 points this weekend. I think after what happened to Man City last weekend, they will be praying on their knees that Liverpool drop at least a couple of points this weekend, because the idea of us staying 5 points ahead after a test as difficult as Stamford Bridge, I think our next difficult game would be, our next difficult game would be against Man United. You can decide whether or not you think that's actually going to be a tough match, and that's in about a month's time. So really, City will be banking on us dropping some points so they can at least close the gap a little bit. Obviously, they're playing before us as well, so it'll be fascinating to see how that one pans out. If you're interested, they're playing Watford at home at 3 o'clock on Saturday, so not really one that you'd look at and bank on the opposition getting any kind of result out of it. But with the issues they have with injuries at the moment, you just never know, and you'd hope that loss to Norwich has knocked their confidence a little bit. By no means am I suggesting that there is a solid chance of Liverpool finishing the weekend 8 points clear at the top of the league, but certainly one to think about if you are a bit of an optimist. And like I said, I think what's most important is that we get the win and we establish to Man City that we are probably operating on a level above them this season. I think it's fair to say. I think if we can win this game and not drop points, then it would certainly show that we are not wavering in the way they already have done. And like I said, that's an incredible psychological blow for them and a huge, huge psychological boost for Liverpool, especially with it being, like I said, an away game at a really tough ground. A ground where I wouldn't say we've struggled, but we've never quite sort of prospered on a huge scale, I think it's fair to say. So looking at the team news going into the game, there's a fair few positive updates from Jurgen Klopp's press conference that he held this afternoon. The team then trained this Friday afternoon as well, and Naby Keita is back in full training. Thankfully, his latest injury hasn't kept him out for too long, and so hopefully he can start to really build a run in the side. I don't think he's going to really play any part at all this weekend. He certainly won't be featuring from the start because, like I said, he only came back into full training today, so he's not really going to be anywhere near the required fitness level. He maybe gets a substitute appearance if Jurgen Klopp feels like it, and sort of obviously with the injury only having kept him out for just around about a month, it's not one that's going to take him too long to recover from. But on the flip side, you also want to be careful. He's had kind of recurring injuries throughout his Liverpool career so far. He's never really had one that's kept him out for ages, but he does seem to occasionally pick up ones that keep him out for a month or something like that. So I think Klopp will be wary of aggravating any injury that he's just recovered from yet. And I think also looking ahead to the MK Dons game on Wednesday night, I think that's the one where we can certainly look at Naby Keita getting some minutes and hopefully his first start of the season as well. So Keita back in full training, but probably not ready for the game this weekend. Alisson is also making positive progress. Jurgen Klopp spoke about how he's now doing sessions with John Achterberg. They're not sessions with the first team yet, so there's no chance of him playing this weekend or indeed in the midweek game against MK Dons or anything like that. But the updates seem to be positive. Klopp seemed to be happy about how Alisson was progressing, and I think that target that they've placed down of the next international break, which is early on in October, it looks like we're certainly going to meet that, and potentially getting back for the last game before that. I think it's Leicester on the 5th of October as our last game before the next international break. Maybe Jurgen Klopp's looking at that and thinking there's a little possibility there that he can squeeze a game in for Alisson Becker, but I think we'll probably end up playing it safe and leaving it until the international break. But it's always good to hear that he is progressing positively. Divock Origi as well, it sounds like the injury he picked up against Newcastle isn't quite as bad as previously thought. You know, we didn't really get any prognosis after the game. It's kind of been left to see how he recovers, rather than, you know, Jurgen Klopp hasn't actually given us any sort of time frame. But from what he said he's doing quite well. He said it's unlikely he'll play in the game at the weekend, but he did actually say that he's not going to 100% rule it out. I think he certainly doesn't seem to be ruling out Divock Origi making a return in the very, very near future. So unlikely we'll see him in any capacity this weekend, but certainly a positive update when you consider the amount of fixtures we've got coming up and the congestion. I think it would be nice if he could play against MK Dons, but that is probably around about 50-50 at this stage. So all in all, in terms of injury news, things seem to be going quite well at the moment. No, there are no new injuries to report, and everyone seems to be coming back either on schedule or ahead of schedule. And Jurgen Klopp certainly seems to be happy with the options he's got available from his squad at the moment. So as for how I think he's actually going to line us up at Stamford Bridge on Sunday afternoon, I think the goalkeeper's obviously going to be Adrian. This is going to be interesting to see how he performs after what I think was his best game in a Liverpool shirt on Tuesday night. I'm absolutely gutted for him that he comes away with essentially nothing from that game. Obviously the whole team does, but it really feels like he did his absolute best to try and stop Liverpool from losing that game. So hopefully he puts in another performance like that. Obviously he's already played against Chelsea in the Super Cup, but as I said, that was a totally different game. He'd done barely any training with the squad up to that point, so there wasn't really the same understanding that I think they have now built up. You can see already, and I've mentioned it on past videos, they're passing back to him with a lot more confidence. They're passing back to him in situations where he is going to get put under pressure, and while he doesn't maybe play as many short passes as Alisson, he's not exactly the kind of play out from the back goalkeeper that we knew we had in Alisson. But, you know, with Alisson being, you know, £67 million worth of goalkeeper, that's kind of understandable given we got Adrian on a free and he's never played for a team that actually plays the ball out from the back like Liverpool. But certainly when he gets given the ball, he doesn't make mistakes. He often just clears it long or sends it long to one of the front three. But I think they've adapted their game to that as well. One of them always seems to come short to around about the halfway line to try and receive the ball from Alisson. So there's definitely more of an understanding there, and it certainly feels like we're not sacrificing our usual game as much. Obviously, there is still going to be the drop-off in quality because while he did have a brilliant game on Tuesday night, he's never going to be Alisson Becker, but it doesn't feel like it's affecting the rest of the team now as well, because I feel like they are very much in tune with what he's trying to do. So Adrian will be starting in goal. Hopefully another big performance from him, and hopefully what I think would be a deserved clean sheet in a Liverpool shirt. He's only got one so far, and I think he certainly deserves more than that based on the way he's been playing for us this season. In front of him, I think you keep Joel Matip and Virgil van Dijk in defence. Obviously, with the game against MK Dons, I think that's where they'll get a little bit of a rest. Jurgen Klopp will probably rotate very, very heavily for that game, and we might even see, you know, a completely different outfield 10 or even starting 11 across the pitch. So I think Matip and Virgil will start this weekend. They've been fantastic so far this season, and then they will get their rest on Wednesday night. I think it's a similar situation with the fullbacks as well. Andrew Robertson will just have to play because he is by far and away the best possible player we've got for that position. And I think Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's a little bit more of a debate because I think he's struggled a little bit so far this season. A fair few of the chances we've conceded and the goals we've conceded as well have come down that side. But I do think that is because he seems to be playing in an even more advanced role, certainly a more central role as well. Obviously, the whole idea with Trent is that he plays with Mohamed Salah, and Salah loves to cut inside. So Trent often has that right-hand side all to himself to do all the crossing and getting to the byline. It feels like more and more this season, he's getting into the box more and he's coming inside into the midfield area a bit more. And, you know, The negative side of that does seem to be that we're conceding a few more chances down that side, and he's often getting caught in positions he doesn't want to be in. So maybe there needs to be an adjustment there in midfield. I think maybe Henderson, who often plays on that side, needs to be drawn back a little bit, or maybe we put Milner there, who, as we know, is a very versatile player, so could be dropped into the right back position occasionally. We've obviously also got Fabinho, who does play right back for the Brazilian national team, and I think did play it in his early days at Monaco, so he knows exactly what to do dropping into that position, and we've seen that a few times this season. So I don't think by any means it's a negative indictment of Trent. I don't think it shows that he's having a poor season. I think if anything, he's started the season really, really well and has been such an important attacking outlet for Liverpool, and I think it's great that he's slightly diversified his role and is cutting inside and getting into the box more, because it makes it more difficult for teams to shut them down. We saw a bit last season. I know I'm really, really rambling here, but it's come into my mind, and I think it is interesting how we've deployed the fullbacks this season. But it did start to happen towards the end of last season where teams realised if they isolated our fullbacks, they would cause us real problems, because then we'd have to create from deep. But obviously the fullbacks bomb on, and then the midfielders love to actually sort of help out defensively a little bit more, and they're more the engine room, and they're not really as much of a creative outlet. So I think we're adapting to that by slightly altering the roles of the fullbacks, changing how they behave, and like I said, just diversifying the positions that they occupy and where they look to create chances from. So I'm not criticising Trent by any means. I do think there's a possibility that maybe we look at playing Joe Gomez, just as a possibility. I don't think it's actually something that Jurgen Klopp would do, but I think it's certainly something that he will have talked to his coaching staff about, especially, you know, with the amount of games Trent's played already this season. But on the flip side, I think Joe Gomez, whatever you want to call him, will probably get a game against MK Dons in midweek. So I think we stick with Trent. We look to try and dominate Chelsea, at least for certain periods of the game. I think when we've got the ball, we've got to look to try and push up, because it's something we were missing against Napoli as well. One of the problems was when we, up until about the 70-minute mark, where we did start to assert some authority on the game, I felt like while we were counter-attacking and that was working, whenever we did get the ball and there wasn't a counter-attack on, we didn't show the composure needed to just gradually push up the pitch. And I think that's something we'll probably look to do against Chelsea, because if we can do that, then we'll assert a lot more control on the game than if we just try to counter-attack against them. So I think that's what we go with the defence. I think with the midfield, like I said, I think we go with something that's very, very engine room. We have Fabinho, who can help out defensively, and I think we have Jordan Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum just kind of operating in the double number 8 role. There's certainly a shout for Oxlade-Chamberlain. It looks like Jurgen Klopp is trying to give him as much football as possible at the moment. He got a start against Newcastle, probably not one of his best games in Liverpool shirt, I think it's fair to say, but he is gradually building up his match fitness and his match sharpness after coming back from injury. So I think we possibly see Oxlade-Chamberlain, certainly from the bench, depending on how the game's going. If we need a goal, or, you know, if things are going well and we just want to sling someone on to give them a bit of extra game time, then I think we see Oxlade-Chamberlain in some capacity. But I think we start off conservatively with that midfield of Henderson, Gini Wijnaldum, and then Fabinho in the middle, and then the front three, it's got to be Salah, Firmino and Mane. So taking a little look at Chelsea then, they've got a fair bit of injury news of their own going into this game, and N'Golo Kante, who's missed out on the last few matches, will be back fit for them, which is obviously a blow for Liverpool. It's a positive for the Premier League because he's a fantastic player, probably Chelsea's best midfielder by a country mile, and one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, and he had an absolutely fantastic game against us in the Super Cup, was probably the man of the match in that game, and I'm sure will cause us plenty of problems this weekend. So it's a bit of a blow that he's going to be back, because I feel like maybe that was a slight contributing factor to the inconsistent form that Chelsea have shown so far this season. The fact they didn't have their midfield talisman in the side. Obviously he was neglected a little bit under Maurizio Sarri, but I really feel like Frank Lampard has realised that he is the player that you want to build the midfield around. You adhere to his style, you make sure that everything goes through him, and you get the best out of N'Golo Kante, because if you get the best out of N'Golo Kante, you're probably going to get the best out of the rest of the Chelsea squad, because he does so much work for the team as well. So he's probably going to play this weekend, which is a little bit of a shame. But Mason Mount is injured. He picked up an injury against Valencia. I'm not entirely sure about the severity of it, but it's fairly clear that he's not going to be playing in this game. He looked pretty crestfallen when he went off the pitch after 15 minutes against Valencia, so I think he certainly knows that the injury is not going to be an easy one to recover from. But that's obviously a blow for them. Certainly a positive for Liverpool, because he's played very, very well so far this season. He had a little cameo against us in the Super Cup as well, and played pretty solidly. You know, he had that goal that was ruled out for offside where it was so tight, and it was a really good finish as well, and he's been scoring goals for Chelsea. He's been, you know, helping out the rest of the attack as well. Him and Tammy Abraham have really built up an understanding, so it's certainly a positive for Liverpool that he's not playing, because Tammy Abraham has been fantastic so far this season. He didn't really have a great game against us in the Super Cup, but since then he's been absolutely banging the goals in. His numbers have been those so far of a veteran Premier League striker, and obviously you expect some sort of regression to the mean. There have been plenty of players who've been banging in the goals over the first 5 games that you imagine will probably finish the season on about 15 or 20 goals, and you probably expect him to finish somewhere around that, but he's certainly on a hot streak at the moment. He's doing very well, and I feel like some of that was down to the way he and Mason Mount played off each other. They're both Chelsea Academy graduates. They've been playing with each other for years, so they've obviously developed a very clear understanding, and you imagine it will affect him negatively, the fact that Mason Mount's not going to be alongside him. Looking at how they played against Valencia in midweek, obviously they lost like Liverpool, and I think like Liverpool they have every right to feel hard done by, because looking back on the highlights of that game, they absolutely dominated it. They created so many chances, they played some really nice football, they were very good going forward, quick 1-2 touch football, you know, the kind of stuff we didn't expect from Chelsea under Frank Lampard. You know, I think we all kind of expected them to be a bit sluggish, you know, there wouldn't be very complex football. It would take him a while to really work out what style he wanted to imprint on Chelsea. But they are playing absolutely brilliantly at the moment in terms of how they're going forward. And the only thing that's really missing for them, I think, is just that killer finishing touch. I think obviously some of it is to do with the fact that Tammy Abraham's very young. A lot of the players are very young. And then they've got wingers like Pedro and Willian, who are used to not being goal-scoring wingers, because that was kind of Eden Hazard's job. Their job was more to be a traditional winger, get to the byline, get crosses in, create space for other players to score goals. So now there's a lot more pressure on them to find the back of the net, and they're not really living up to it, especially Willian, who had quite a few chances against Valencia to get a goal for Chelsea, and it just did not happen for him. So I'd expect them to create chances against us, even though, you know, I back our defence to play very well. They haven't obviously been maybe as brilliant this season as they were last season, but that you can always look at things like expected goals and point out that that itself is a bit of a regression to the mean as well, although we have probably also been conceding a few more chances as well as goals than we were at this stage last season. So I'm expecting them to cause us problems, but hopefully, fingers crossed, they don't score too many goals, or don't even score 1 goal, because like I said, their finishing hasn't quite been there so far this season. And that's one of the reasons that I'm very interested to see who actually starts for them, because obviously Giroud started for them against us in the Super Cup, gets a goal. He's always caused us problems, Olivier Giroud. He pretty much always scores when he starts against Liverpool, because he is just a solid finisher. And even if you keep him quiet for 89 minutes, he can get one chance, and it doesn't matter what kind of chance it is. You know, if it's not working for him in terms of trying to, you know, get in behind defences, then he'll look for crosses, or he'll look for tap-ins, or he'll get the ball and just try and use brute strength to get past people. He has plenty of ways of creating chances, and he often puts them away once he gets them. So I think Frank Lampard may lean towards playing Olivier Giroud after the problems they had against Valencia in terms of actually finding the back of the net, and also the situation around Tammy Abraham not having, you know, his ideal player to play alongside him, Mason Mount. So that's certainly going to affect my mood going into the match. I think if I see Tammy Abraham starting for them, I'll have a lot of confidence that we can keep a clean sheet and go on and get the result. I think if Giroud starts for them, then we're maybe looking at a bit more of a slog of a game. I certainly don't think it's going to be an easy game for Liverpool by any stretch of the imagination. I think it is going to be tough. You look at the way Valencia won, if you want to follow that blueprint, it was essentially a smash and grab. Chelsea dominated the game pretty much all the way through. Valencia barely created any chances, but they just got that one with the free kick that was very well worked. It caught Chelsea unawares. You know, they've got a young defence as well, let's not forget. They've got, I think, who is it in the moment? Christensen and Tomori playing at the centre-back. Christensen, who's sort of been on and off, in and out of the Chelsea side, and then Tomori, who's only just come in, although he has put in some positive performances so far. So I think we'll look to take advantage of them early on. So I'd expect us to score. It's just a matter of whether or not Chelsea can get us goals at the other end, and whether or not we're a bit more clinical, because that was the problem against Napoli. And I think that's the one thing we need to sort out, is A, picking the right options when you've got the attacks, and then B, actually sticking the ball in the back of the net once you get them. I trust our attack to do that. I trust them to bounce back, and I'm hoping that Liverpool get the win. I'm expecting a win from Liverpool, but like I said, I don't think it'll be easy. I think we're looking probably at maybe a 1-0, a 2-0, or a 2-1 victory for Liverpool. Those are probably the 3 scorelines that I'd put any money on for this game. So yeah, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, as always, you know what to do. Hit that like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back on Sunday evening after we've hopefully beaten Chelsea to maintain our lead at the top of the Premier League. Until then, bye for now.